Hi everyone, Clean Tune, Thinny Tune, Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Weezer EP, Seasons, Winter. This is the newest EP from legendary alternative rock outfit Weezer, finishing off their ambitious Seasons series, where the band released a small batch of new original material at the start of each season, which so far haven't exactly been great. Spring did have its bright and acoustic highs, but also some very corny lows too. Summer's attempt at something heavier and more hellish kind of fell flat. And fall being pitched as more of a dance record is easily one of the biggest delusions of Weezer's entire career. Not to mention the various classical and Vivaldi nods throughout the series thus far, not exactly being pulled off in the most tasteful or coherent and sensible of ways, like, for example, the winter theme to Vivaldi's Four Seasons being referenced much earlier in the series. On paper, doing this series of seasonal EPs is easily one of Weezer's most ambitious conceptual outings ever, but I don't know if it could have been sloppier in terms of execution, especially when you have albums like OK Human to compare to in recent memory. So yeah, now we're finally at the end of this thing with Winter, and once again I'm having to make a bit of a mental stretch to see this thing as wintry. Knowing Weezer, of course, I'm not surprised to hear for a few moments sleigh bells on the track Iambic Pentameter, or to hear the vocal melodies on Dark Enough to See the Stars giving off Christmas Carol vibes. There are even some allusions to the Christmas holiday on the closing track too. All painfully obvious references to make, but at least Weezer isn't singing about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I guess. That being said though, the band actually manages to pull from some places that are much deeper than the Christmas spirit on this one, and they actually managed to come through with their best set of tracks in this whole season series thus far. Honestly, it feels like kind of a thank you to the fans. Hey, you put up with almost a whole year of harebrained musical schemes from us, so now you can have a solid batch of hooky power pop tracks built on those familiar Weezerisms that you can't get enough of for some reason. So maybe in that way, as well as others, Winter adds to the season series, because now we can enjoy a bunch of tried and true fundamentals on this project, as opposed to the very naive but well-intentioned beginnings of Spring. Not to be too dismissive though, because some of the content of these tracks is pretty good. For example, I Want a Dog, which is a moving alt-rock track about wanting a dog, where Rivers describes all the cute and heartening ways that a dog would improve his life and make him more joyful, set against acoustic arpeggios and weepy strings, which eventually burst into those epic and thick Weezer-esque riffs, regal vocal harmonies as well. It's like hearing all of those grand and orchestral ambitions of the previous EPs pulled off a bit more tastefully. Then deeper into the track, we're hit with lyrics like, I made the wrong choice. And I think Rivers begins to reveal the dog as more of a metaphor, talking about how we're all rational agents making moves to try and be famous. Maybe at the end of the day, the dog represents a happier, simpler life that at this point Rivers feels like he can't go back to. Then Iambic Pentameter reminds me of a handful of tracks in the season series so far, which have odd groove and riff patterns, not to mention all sorts of jarring changes and multiple phases, many of which come off very disjointed, namely the metal riffs and squealing violins in the finale. Is this track a slight improvement on previous songs that felt similarly chaotic? Yes, I suppose. But I still think there's a mix of oil and water going on here, because you're taking one of the most wildly accessible and simplistic sounds in modern alternative rock music and trying to apply it to these really cerebral and layered and kind of complex musical ideas. Maybe in a way Rivers' pained lyrics about not being able to express himself in the way that he wants kind of makes sense on this one, because trying to hear him make a rock opera out of Weezer's usual sound is kind of like trying to prepare Michelin star sushi with a butter knife. The following Basketball is kind of like that inner monologue you imagine going on in the head of a kid who is kind of sitting out gym class because he's not all that physically adept. The instrumental transition into the chorus isn't really all that smooth, plus the acoustic intro on the cut is somewhat hokey, but there are some very pretty guitar harmonies on the bridge of the track, and I like like how Rivers effectively works another metaphor into the cut here too, like he did on I Want a Dog, where his exclusion from a basketball game, or rather his desire to be invited into the game, that essentially serves as a stand-in for just a heartening desire for connection. The next cut, Sheridan Commander, is maybe the most frigid song on the entire record, with Rivers singing in a very gentle falsetto against acoustic arpeggios that are quite whimsical, string harmonies too. Eventually this builds into some very militaristic and intense snares as he is making reference to George Washington. I feel like we're suddenly being subjected to a small Civil War era epic, which, okay, sounds cool, but I guess aesthetically feels a little, I don't know, out of a place with what we've heard on the record so far. Though maybe Rivers was just overtaken by mental images of George Washington crossing an icy Delaware, and it just kind of drove him to write this track. Plus, the closing moments on the song lyrically are pretty interesting, with him mentioning remembering these streets, but it all doesn't mean what it used to me. Between this and many other songs on the EP, Rivers just seems to be in a constant state of isolation and loss, which is also the case on the lyrics of the song Dark Enough to See the Stars, which kind of sounds like if you took the intro to My Name is Jonas and you tried to write a Christmas song to it. The meld is a bit too awkward and it kind of feels too regimented to really rock, but I suppose there have been far worse songs in the season series so far. Then we have The One That Got Away, which, thematically speaking, has there ever been a man in any medium of art that has been more prepared to create based upon a topic? Rivers is literally Mr. The One That Got Away. Now, for sure, this is a catchy power pop tune, and you could take it at face value. I'm sad without you. I still think about you. But in the grander scheme of things, this track also adds to this EP's themes of loss, loneliness, and sort of entrapment. Now, by the end of this EP, and this whole series, in fact, Rivers is tired. He is so tired, he is writing a song titled The Deep and Dreamless Sleep, which he says is a pill for all his pain. He says the phone has stopped ringing around the clock, they've forgotten about him, he can't make out the words on the page, he's having a hard time hearing what they say, he can't remember some things. I mean, the track is very obviously a meditation on aging, death, and potentially irrelevance. And yes, there are some cute allusions to Christmas here and there and the mistletoe, but also this song is mostly about letting someone go. And in that respect, it's quite dark, even if the whole thing is being soundtracked by very driving riffs and drums and super exuberant pop group vocals. An awesome solo bridge and finale as well, which makes for maybe the highest peak of tension and release in the entire season series. And with that being said, I think Winter is actually the highest peak so far in the season series. By quite a bit too. I mean, I'm not in love with the damn thing, but if everything up until this point had been this consistent and enjoyable, this would have been a much nicer experience. So while I do like this, I think much of this series has been marked by just feeling a bit rushed and slapped together. Or maybe that just the band and Rivers were trying to achieve a level of artistry or artistic coherence that was just out of their reach. But hey, you know what? This one over here is nice, and a win is a win. I'm feeling a light to decent 7 on this EP. Yeah. Transition. Have you given this thing a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Weezer of Forever.